that will be on us. So I'm going to be very full open book here. I'm not going to hide my opinions because I think y'all are all smart organizers. You're strategic. You deserve to have all of the behind the scenes information that I have as you make your own decision. I want to be clear, Lee and I are talking to you here because we are not the leaders of this movement. Because it is not enough for us to make a statement on our own. It has to be informed by the actual leaders of this movement, and that is y'all. Unlike Chuck Schumer, we listen to constituents. We listen to people before we commit to strategic action. That's what we're trying to do here. So for a quick agenda, Lee is going to cover a little bit of background on how we got here. I'll cover some recommendations and next steps. Then we're going to have Q&A, and then we're going to take a vote. That's the plan. So prepare yourself for that. That's where we're headed in this conversation. If you'll look, there is a Q&A section just like we do for the What's the Plan? And the Q&A, I'll just go through and I will look at the most upvoted questions, and we will just do it that way. So if you've got questions, please submit it there. And then if you don't have questions, but you want to be part of the conversation, upvote the ones that you can scroll through and look at. That's how we will decide how we go. We got Eric at the top right now. I see you there, Eric, and we'll start getting there once we get into the Q&A. But please ask questions. Okay, Leah. With that, is there anything I need to cover before I turn it over to you to cover the lay of the land and how we got here? Sorry. People are asking where the Q&A link is. If you're in Zoom, there's a Q&A button right there. You might need to expand your Zoom window or click the little more button to see Q&A.
Did you mention the chat box and being supportive and
I did not. Okay. Sorry, y'all. We're flying by the seat of our pants. Look, we're going to discuss some pretty hard things today, and reasonable people might strategically disagree, and that's okay. We are a diverse nationwide movement. We represented a lot of different political geographies. We come from a lot of different walks in life. We are all fighting for democracy. Some of these are judgment calls. I would just ask everybody, treat each other with respect. Okay to disagree. We're going to try to make some hard choices today, but we can do that with respect, even if we're not fully on the same page.
Oh, Ezra, we are missing one thing. I think we're going to start with a temperature check poll for folks.
Yes.
Just so that we can get a little bit of a quick sense of the room before we go.
That's right.
So I'm going to start talking while encourage everybody to fill out the temperature check poll that should have just popped up for you.
That's right.
So first, I'm just going to say we did not expect to be here even just a few months ago. We as a movement, New York Indivisibles in particular, have cultivated a strong working relationship with Senator Schumer for years. We have worked pretty hard to try to be in relationship with Democratic leadership, even when we have serious strategic disagreements, even when we have serious policy disagreements. We appreciate Senator Schumer's work on stuff like advancing a really major slate of judicial nominations during the Biden administration. So with all the respect for his decades of service, I think it's important that we lay out the situation that we are in and our recommendation. More than a month ago, Indivisible started pointing to this March 14th funding deadline as this key leverage point that Democrats had to rein in Trump and Musk and the entire MAGA agenda. That is because funding bills, unlike nominations, unlike executive actions, unlike budget reconciliation, require 60 votes in the Senate to overcome a filibuster. So all through nominations, Democrats were saying to us, hey, we don't have the power to block these nominations, but wait till we get to the funding bill. Republicans obviously only have 53 senators. That means they needed Democratic votes here. We were calling on Democrats to draw a hard line in the sand. So no votes unless there were no MAGA cuts to essential programs we rely on and ironclad protections against the Trump-Musk attack on our government. Democrats and especially leadership have been demurring this whole time. They said we have a strategy. They said that we were being too aggressive. While constituents were making their voices heard, our staff were getting these angry phone calls from Democratic senators and their staff saying we weren't reasonable. We had to trust their plan. Under Chuck Schumer's leadership, Senate Democrats did not draw us a line in the sand, and weeks go by like this. Fast forward, Republicans start advancing a funding bill that very obviously does not meet either of our criteria. It includes billions of dollars in cuts to programs for veterans, for medical research, for education, for more. That's fail number one. It also, I want to be clear, paves the way for the Trump-Musk coup to continue. It's not just that there's no guardrails, there's less than zero guardrails. This is a slush fund for the Project 2025 crew to do what they want. That's problem number two. And as if that is not enough, Republicans have been saying out loud, J.D. Vance has been saying out loud, that they are going to unconstitutionally make deeper cuts. Republicans have been saying they're only voting for this because Trump is promising to illegally make more cuts. So this moved in the House first. Pressure from folks on this call and others helped to ensure that House Democrats stood strong. Everyone but Jared Golden from Maine voted against it in the House. Because Republicans are the majority there, it passed, but Democrats really, they did their job. We were then turning to the Senate, where we expected that Democrats would use that 60-vote threshold. The hope was that Senate Democrats would hold strong, as House Democrats expected, as they had been given to believe would happen. And I want to pause here and acknowledge, first of all, that holding strong would have meant going into a shutdown, most likely, or at minimum, going into a brinksmanship period. That would have real harm, and nobody is trying to gloss over that. But the risks of this kind of appeasement, in our judgment, in House Democrats' judgment, in a bunch of other folks' judgment, were greater. As we were building the strategy here, there were three considerations, three kind of like places we were focusing on. First, the litigators who are fighting Trump and Musk in the court, like those folks who are moving all those legal cases, federal workers, and the impacts for people who rely on government services. And I'm going to report out where things landed for each of those so that you know what we were hearing, but also you understand what Senator Schumer and the House and Democrats were hearing. The litigators who were fighting Trump and Musk in court actively told Senate Democrats, or some of them actively told Senate Democrats to vote against the bill. And we're saying this will not only rebutted the arguments that the impact on the court meant that they needed to vote against the shutdown, or needed to stop shutdown. The union that represented federal workers, AFG, told Senate Democrats to vote against the bill. Yes, ongoing impacts to their workers are horrible, but in the bigger picture, they believe their members had a better chance, would be better protected by a fight than by a surrender in this moment. The third group is people who rely on government programs, and normally this is a really big consideration when we're thinking about the dynamics of the shutdown. But Republicans have told us, they have told us themselves, it does not matter what funding Congress passes, they're going to continue to withhold money as they see fit. With Trump as king dynamics like that, it makes very clear capitulation is not going to protect anyone at risk. So that's our analysis of the dynamics. Schumer spent the next several days obscuring the plan. He announced that Democrats opposed the CR. He insisted that Republicans did not have the votes to pass it. Our intel from the Hill kept telling us that something was up, that Schumer was planning to give enough Democratic votes for this dirty CR to clear the filibuster in exchange for a vote on an amendment he knew would fail. All the while, you, indivisibles across the country, are lighting up the Senate phones, are demanding that elected leaders use this moment to fight back. Federal employees unions, litigators, government wonks are all saying vote no. Party insiders, former Biden officials, House Democrats were begging senators to vote no. Finally, Schumer announces his opposition to the bill was a fake out. And he'll vote for cloture, which is to say that he'll vote for the thing that actually allows the bill to move forward, and that he encouraged fellow Democrats to do the same. This means giving up one of the only leverage points that Democrats have for this entire Congress to rein in Trump. And in the end, 10 Democrats, including Schumer, voted to give Trump what he wanted. The cuts go through. The coup continues. This is a huge betrayal of the party, of Democratic voters, of activists who worked to put Democrats in to check Donald Trump, of our democracy. Our analysis is pretty simple. Schumer surrendered. He declined to lead at a crucial moment, and that has done enormous damage to our country, to our party. That is why we are here.
Thanks, Leah. I'm going to go into I think that was pretty clear, and I think you can guess what our assessment is. But we did take a poll. So can we share the poll results, folks? Okay, great. So 73% think that it's not even close what Senate Democrats have done. 27% say they've done a little bit, but there's room for improvement. We had one vote for they're doing everything perfect. Hey, look, we are a diverse movement, lots of different views out there. But I think that's a pretty clear a clear message. We would like to see Senate Democrats do a little bit more, or maybe a whole bunch more. I'm going to cover here, before we get to Q&A, my full and honest assessment, folks. And I would just remind you, submit questions in the Q&A function. We will go into full Q&A for the rest of this call before we take a vote. So please go there. Please vote for what you want to see us cover so we can have a full, real discussion about this. Look, leaders make mistakes. It happens. That is actually kind of normal. This is worse than a mistake. This is worse than that. This is, in my view, a fundamental breaking of trust. It did not happen in a vacuum. It follows Schumer encouraging his caucus to vote for the Lincoln-Riley MAGA messaging bill on immigration that allows Trump, the administration, to go after folks who are just accused of crimes. Terrible bill. Earlier this year, it follows weeks and weeks of him refusing to whip his caucus against cabinet nominations. They continue in recent days to vote for Trump cabinet nominations and other nominees. It follows months of him refusing to use unanimous consent or other procedural maneuvers to slow things down. He's just declined repeatedly. And for each of these actions, there were excuses, maybe reasonable excuses. The surrender yesterday is indefensible. And I use that word intentionally, indefensible, because it's a word I've heard from other senators directly. There are pros and cons to fighting for a shutdown. Totally. There absolutely are. There is no reasonable defense for the leadership that got us into that mess and that led to that surrender, that made us looking pathetic, in addition to surrendering on terrible MAGA priorities that are now going to have the force of law. The stakes here are just too high for us to let this slide. Schumer is not driving a real strategy to oppose Trump. The tactics that he is using flow from this strategic disagreement. The reason why we are disappointed him repeatedly on tactics is because he is not acting like this is a constitutional crisis. We get the party and we get the leadership that we demand. And we're in a moment right now where there's an opportunity to demand something more. That's real. That is the only silver lining of this god-awful mess. And I want to be clear, I do not take this step lightly. I have spent the better part of the last decade in plenty of disagreements with Chuck Schumer. Publicly and privately, I have disagreed with him quite loudly. This is categorically different. So I'm going to say this. I believe the time has come for Indivisible to call on Chuck Schumer to step down from his role as minority leader and allow someone else to lead the opposition. I do not believe we can effectively fight for our democracy with Schumer at the helm. Schumer is at 28% approval rating. 28%, far lower than Trump or even Musk. He is awful on TV. He cannot convincingly communicate his message. He actively demotivates people all across the country who should be on our side. And he spends most of his free time flying to billionaires' mansions to ask them for money. He is a symbol of the corrupt and broken system that voters hate. This is not an AOC versus Schumer thing. This is not a left versus middle versus conservative dim thing. All voters hate this. We are living right now through the first congressional recess for the Senate right now during a constitutional crisis. And what is Chuck Schumer doing? He's going on a book tour. He's going on a book tour. That's what Chuck Schumer, the leader of the Senate Democrats, is doing right now. He is an anchor on this party. He has lost the ability to lead the opposition if he had any interest in doing so. And he has told us, not with his words, but as clearly as he can with his actions, he does not want to lead it. I do not believe this relationship is strained. I believe it is broken. This is my assessment. But as I said, I'm not Chuck Schumer, and I believe we should listen to the people who are actually leading on the ground rather than commit to a strategic decision without them. There are 1,600 local indivisible groups. There are about 1,000 of you on this call right now from all over the country, from every state. This is a national decision. And because this is a national decision, we're talking to you all. Earlier today at 9 a.m., we met with the Indivisible group leaders all across the state of New York. Because while this is a national decision, it is their senator, and the decision we make nationally will affect their relationship. So we wanted to get their input ahead of this call and let you know how New Yorkers are feeling in this moment. We polled them on this the same way we will be polling you. 82% of the New York Indivisible leaders said Indivisible should call on him to drop. 16% said we should probably call on him to drop, but they might have more questions. 2%, which is to say 4 votes in that call, said no, we shouldn't make this decision. I think it's fair to characterize that as overwhelming support from New York State Indivisibles. And many local New York State Indivisibles right now are working on statements to make that call. And that's good. You should not wait for national. And we'll get to that if that's where you are. But as I said, this is not just a New York State fight. If Schumer drops, it's not going to be just pressure in New York. It's not going to just be directed at Schumer. The minority leader's constituents are the other Senate Democrats. And if he's going to go and go soon, we need their voices demanding Schumer step aside and rallying behind someone else who can lead the Democrats in opposition. I believe one of them or more will eventually be coming out publicly for this. I think that is in the near-term future. A major step to get there, though, is having all indivisible groups calling on Senate Democrats to make this pitch. Now, some of you have Democratic senators, so you can push them directly on this. For those of you with Republican senators, it's really important to use this recess to show we are not here just to beat up on Democrats. We are doing the work on the ground to push back against MAGA, to push back against Musk, to push back against Trump, and to push our Republican senators. You want to strengthen our hand against the Schumers of the world? You want to put somebody else in charge, but you live in Texas, or you live in Florida, or you live in Arkansas? Organize and show that you're organizing there. That will strengthen our hand. That will weaken Schumer. Because Schumer isn't going to Texas or Florida or Georgia. He's going on a book tour. We're doing the work on the ground to actually build a successful opposition party, but we need to show that with our actions. So a lot of what I'm saying here is based on our analysis from the inside. We talked to a lot of staff. We talked to a lot of members of Congress on the House side and the Senate side. I've been texting with them for the last week or talking to them directly. I want to say what we would do if we came out with a statement saying that Schumer should drop is a first step. The intel we have from DC is that this is not an ideological fight, that folks across the ideological spectrum are furious with Schumer right now. And this vote could very well be a tipping point. But they are looking around and they are trying to see how intense and committed the opposition is. I've heard from senators, there are actual multiple senators considering coming out publicly. This is what I've heard directly. But they're looking to see what this broader response is. Courage, as we say, is contagious. It really is. But courage doesn't just come from senators, it comes from all of us. So your groups being loud and united in calling for a change will send a signal, and it might lead others to do the same. We need to show Democrats that there's not just support for this, there's demand for it. I would like nothing more than for us to be spending all of our combined energies focusing on the Republican overreach, on the Musk-Trump coup, on their assault on our constitutional republic. That's what we should be doing. But Chuck Schumer decided to fracture this party in a surrender to Trump, in a surrender to Mike Johnson and to John Thune and their congressional Republicans. He forced this on us. And so we have a choice. If we go along with him and say, you're right, we don't have any power to change things, or if we actually make a move here. That's how I see it. A couple questions before we get into the actual questions that are coming up, because we've had some common questions. Will Schumer actually step aside? Nobody knows. Here's where I would say we are. This is probably something akin to the situation shortly after the Biden debate that was disastrous. And there were a lot of questions of would he step aside or wouldn't he? And smart money was on. Probably not, but maybe. I don't know. What I can say is I've never seen the level of unified anger at one single leader ever across ideological divides, across geographic divides, across institutions. I saw reporters saying in decades of coverage, they've never seen a party just unilaterally choose to surrender to another party's partisan funding bill. Never seen it happen. This is weird, y'all. This is out of the normal way that politics works. This is not how an opposition party, even a divided opposition party, normally works. This is odd and unacceptable and indefensible. Will Schumer leave over it? I guarantee you, he's going on an apology tour right now, him and the other ones who voted for it. And they're saying something like, there are good people on both sides of it. This is tough, and you should be angry. You should be mad. I understand that. And I'm going to try to do better. I'm going to listen, and we're going to fight the next fight. And we've got to really focus on these darn Republicans. Don't you agree? He's going to try to meet the anger where it is and direct it elsewhere. I think we have to hold strong. I think if we hold strong and we are committed to this course of action, it might lead to new leadership. And I wouldn't just do this for the sake of doing it. The reason to do this is because we think we can affect change. I think there's a good enough chance and Indivisible can play an important enough role that it's worth pursuing it. What if he doesn't step aside? If he doesn't step aside, the message that the Democrats will get from a concentrated campaign here is there are consequences for this kind of behavior. They might adjust. The only outcome of this might be that other Democrats see him as a cautionary tale, and that itself would be positive. Got a lot of questions, and I saw them in the chat earlier, and we'll get to them about primaries. We'll get to them when we get into the questions. I'm happy to talk about it. Obvious question is, well, if not Chuck, who? There are a lot of other senators who could do it. Heinrich in New Mexico, Amy Klobuchar, Cory Booker. There are a lot. There are a lot of options out there. I'm not here to endorse one option or another. That is not the choice in front of us right now. The choice in front of us is, do we call for him to step down? What that will do is create space for one of them to say, me, I want to lead the opposition. We want to create that opening for them. Unless we create it, they will hang back. They will hang back. There are some other frequently asked questions, but I think I've gone on long enough, Leah. I think we should just get into the questions that came in ahead of time. So let's go to questions. Please, reminder, put them in the Q&A function. Vote up the ones you want to see, and we'll launch into it. Leah, did I miss anything or characterize anything in a way that you don't approve?
No, I think you characterized it correctly. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, Hope has I believe, the top question with 120 votes. Question, can you share details from the government experts you alluded to this morning who shot holes in Schumer's rationale for surrender? I'm getting feedback from members who find this rationale compelling and need to counter that. Absolutely, Hope. Leah, I'm going to let you answer. I will just say, sure. I found this rationale compelling. This rationale gave me pause and our entire team pause. We took it very seriously.
Yeah, and I actually, I don't know if this is the kind of question where I should invite Andrew specifically to come off camera and speak to it, or, but I'm happy to if. Okay, I'll get started. So basically, the gist of this here is that there was a rumor going around within the Senate for the last week or so, and I think Schumer alluded to this in some of his public conversations, that essentially in a shutdown, Trump would be able to decide which courts would stay open, and thus be able to achieve outcomes in the pending litigation on all these fronts that were tilted towards the MAGA courts that are available. That is not that the litigators who are pursuing a bunch of the most crucial cases were pretty uniform that this is not the case. It is not something they are concerned about. And in fact, they were more concerned about the fact that this budget or this funding bill by virtue of including a set of protection or a set of things related to the Musk-Trump power grab would kind of give stronger legal ground to Trump and Musk to defend what they are doing. Andrew, do you want to speak to specifics there? I see you on camera.
And just so folks who don't know, Andrew is our
sorry.
national advocacy director who is holding a lot of relationships on Capitol Hill and driving a lot of strategy for us.
Thanks. And hi, folks. Glad to be here with you all. Leah, your answer was exactly right. This was something that that started spreading as kind of a seemingly very good reason to support the bill on Capitol Hill. And this started, we were hearing this organically from a bunch of offices. Hey, have you heard about this concern? This is really serious. But it turns out from the experts and litigators themselves, who of course aren't talking publicly about this. That's not a concern that they share. So this ended up being an excuse rather than a real reason.
Yeah. And just so you know, we saw that all over Capitol Hill. We heard it from a lot of members. So it's a reasonable question. It turns out to maybe in some cases in good faith, and I know in some cases in bad faith, was used as an excuse for folks to vote for this. Jamba Timmer has the next highest question, 102 votes. What do we tell people who think Schumer made the right choice because Trump would take over in a shutdown?
So I think there are two different answers here. I think one is you can have a debate about the actual merits of that consideration. And what I would say there is we are functionally already in a shutdown. In a shutdown, the executive makes decisions about which government functions to keep moving and keep funding and which ones not to. And they have some amount of executive authority to do that, but it's somewhat constrained. Currently, Donald Trump is simply closing down agencies he does not like. He fired half of the staff of the Department of Education and is shutting down entire federal agencies like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and USAID. He is behaving as if we've functionally already entered a shutdown. It's just a shutdown in which he is simply disregarding the law to do whatever he wants with all of the money that was just given to him. So that's kind of the substantive answer that I would give you. And then the other piece I would say is that I think you can have a good faith argument about the risks and the harms and the considerations here and, what is the end game of a shutdown, et cetera. What you cannot do is defend how this went down, because this was a mess. This was a cluster on every possible level. If you were going to fold, there would have been a completely alternate way of approaching this that did not involve asking the House to take the vote that they did on the belief that the Senate would hold strong, that did not involve like a week of no communication, no functional development of a strategy, no socialization of a strategy, no laying the ground for either decision. This is a strategic issue, but it is also just a competence issue. Like, we deserve people who have a strategy and organize around the strategy instead of people who wait till the last minute and then they're like, surprise, here's what I'm going to do. That's not how leadership works.
Well said, Leo. Deborah has the next highest question with 91 votes. I continue to wonder just where we are going with all this. What is the end game? Are we hoping to actually remove Trump from office? Then what? Trying not to be discouraged, but protesting. Will protesting really help us get Republican reps to do something? It's a good question. Well, I can just say, look, our goal is to live to fight another day. I don't think we can take for granted that there are going to be free and fair elections headed into 26 or into 28. I don't think we can take for granted that we will just naturally win back the House or the Senate in 26. And I do think that it is really very important for us to be able to have some amount of power come back to us while we limit the harm and the damage of this administration. We are in the minority nationally. We don't have the House, the Senate, or the presidency. That is reality. That's reality. We can't set the agenda. We can choose how we respond to the agenda. That's what's in our power to do. So that means we should be opposing with what we can, everything we can oppose. We should slow down everything that we can. We should stop what is in our power to stop. And for things that we can't, we should make that an anchor around their necks. We should make that drop them down and use that to fuel a wave in 26. We can't do that if our side is divided. We can't. It's just not possible. The way that we did this in 2017 and 2018 was we built a unified aggressive opposition party against the repeal of the Affordable Care Act and against the Trump tax scam. And then we rode that disappointment of constituents into 2018 to the largest midterm margins in the history of the Republic. We create contrast. What we did not do was what James Carville recommended, which was roll over and play dead.
I want to just add one thing because I am seeing some discourse in the chat that's kind of along the lines of like, give up on Democrats entirely, abandon Democrats' third party. And I do just want to level set that we are really committed within Indivisible and within the movement to working to change the Democratic Party. We are independent of the Democratic Party, but we're really clear that in this country, in this electoral system, with a winner take all, first past the post setup, you have got to work with the party that is closest to your orientation in order to make change, rather than take your ball and go home if you are not getting the outcomes you want. And so I do just want to say, this is a conversation about how we apply our leverage to try to right-size the direction of the Democratic Party. It is not a conversation about walking away, starting a third party that's going to get, some small percent and end up competing with the Democratic Party. We want a strategy conversation about how we do better.
That's right. Great. Next question from Martina. Can we, one, ask the Democrats to remove Chuck as leader, and two, push Chuck to step down entirely? Maybe I'll just walk through a bit the process. Like, how do you get a new Senate minority leader? How does that work? The rules are a little opaque, and that's by design. And in fact, I can't tell you the exact rules because some of them are public rules and some of them are private rules. And I'll lean on Andrew, who's the real expert here, to correct me if I'm wrong on any part of this. But what we know is you need around 20% of the Senate Dem caucus to request a formal meeting of the Senate Democratic Caucus. They send that note to Schumer. So that means getting about 10 Democrats who are willing to go on the record and say, I want a meeting. And the agenda item for that meeting is, we would like to fire you, Chuck. It's not actually said like that. It's probably kinder, but that's the agenda of the meeting. In that meeting of the 47 Democrats who caucus together, there is then a vote, and it is a private vote. It's a private vote. This is not public, where they privately vote on who should be Senate majority or Senate minority leader. 24 votes is a majority. You get 24 votes behind somebody else, that person is Senate minority leader. The private vote is convenient because probably there are some people who have a strong relationship with Chuck and don't want to be seen publicly shivving him, but agree that he is an anchor on the party and would like to get rid of him. And they can maintain plausible deniability and say, wow, that's a real bummer, Chuck. Sorry that happened to you, while being one of the votes that ousted him. As for pushing Chuck to step down entirely, I think that is tougher. I mean, it's up to him. He's got a term. He's been elected. The only pathway to getting him out of office really would be to defeat him in a primary or a general election. He's not up until 2028, so that may happen. I will say, just to state, Indivisible National does not parachute into districts or states and pick primary winners or losers. We don't do that. We defer to the local groups. Now, if local indivisibles in New York want to band together and endorse a primary challenge to Chuck Schumer, and there's sufficient support, and they request Indivisible National to also endorse that primary challenger, that's the process. That's how we would go about it. But it has to start with the locals. We strongly believe that. The immediate fight, though, right now, the immediate opportunity right now is around leadership. And that is something that is either going to move forward soon or it probably won't move forward. Leah, do we have a little kid running into the room?
Yes, he wanted me to know that he's found Elsa.
Oh, okay, great. Zeke has found Elsa. Everybody wanted to announce that. We'll go on to the next question. We'll tell Zeke about the emojis, y'all. Thank you. Okay, so Eric is the next top question. When do we start primarying the 9 Dems and the 1 independent senator? So that's King. Leah, do you want to take it?
Sure. I think just to build on Ezra's previous question, that is up to the folks who are in those states. We are going to try and think through some, first of all, I think do not skip the part where you simply let them know that you are disappointed. We are going to work with the folks who are in those states to figure out what is the accountability plan for these people. Again, like Indivisible National, we're having this call with you all because this is about a national strategy decision. But ultimately, when it comes to a primary in a state, that is going to be like first and foremost about the thinking of the groups in the state. Okay. And we're going to drop, I'm seeing a note, but we're going to drop the advocacy script for folks who do want to make those calls to their senators in the chat. We're going to focus on our advocacy, letting them know that we are disappointed first. And that is where we are right now. Ezra, I think you might be on mute.
Oops, I got muted. The next question is from Mary. Is Schumer's comment about the shutdown giving more power to Trump, and especially his saying the courts would be closed, a true statement? Again, this is in line with some argument we heard early in the process. What I would say is that that worried us as well. Again, we worked with litigators, we worked with good government groups like Public Citizen. We work with the public sector unions like AFG to better understand how much of an issue this was. And their conclusion was, what's the delicate way to put this? It's bullshit. It's a bullshit excuse. And it's an excuse used to scare you and make you think that he is being brave and making a hard choice. But I can't overemphasize just how much on a ledge, almost by himself, Schumer is here. It's the unions, it's the outside groups, it's the grassroots, it's the moderates, it's the establishment Dems, it's the conservative Dems, it's the liberals, it's the progressives. He does not have much support for this position. And he thinks he can get away with it. He thinks he's invulnerable. But that's where we are. Then that's why we're having this call. Next question. Although there are fewer votes for these, I would say. So if we're at about 350, I'm going to keep on going on questions. At about 350, if we're petering out on questions, I want to call an actual vote, and then we can go from there. Greg's question was, we should get your take on the core reasons why the shutdown option was better than what happened. I basically get it, but I'm getting a lot of questions. Maybe I'll just say strategically here was our recommendation. And we were public with this and we were private with this. We thought this would have been a good play. Typically, the way shutdowns work is one party is asking for a clean funding bill that reopens the government, and one party is asking for something else, something more. And Democrats have been on the side of asking for something more. Republicans have been on the side for asking more. If you go into a shutdown, how do you get out of it? Well, public pressure. It's public pressure. Members of Congress start hearing from their constituents. And the question is, well, why don't you reopen the government? And so the side that is asking for something more than a clean funding bill usually caves because they can't say, I would like to reopen the government. Please let me reopen the government. So our recommendation to Senate Democrats was stand in front of the U.S. Capitol and say every single one of us will vote for a funding bill to reopen government with no changes. Status quo funding. The funding on March 15th will be the same as the funding on March 14th. That's what we want. And give us time to negotiate. That was the strategic play. And it's the play that worked during the last and longest government shutdown in history between 2018 and 2019, when Trump last shut down the government. 35 days of shutdown in which Trump was asking for more money for ICE and immigration enforcement. Democrats were saying, let's reopen the government. We want to reopen the government. And 35 days into that shutdown, the Republicans caved. We got a short-term open the government bill and then a negotiation, and we got through it. That was the play to make here. It was the play that the Democrats had the power to make. But instead, they didn't want this fight. They wanted to focus on other things. And Chuck Schumer wanted to go on his book tour. Leah, anything to add to that?
Nope, I think we're good. Rebecca, the next upvoted question is actually, should there be a call to replace Chuck Schumer as minority leader, which feels like a pretty good segue into restating what we are putting on the table here and going to the poll that we will give you. Ezra, do you want to restate kind of the core of what we're asking folks to vote on?
The basic question here is, should Indivisible National call on Chuck Schumer to step down from leadership. It's as simple as that. I think there are deeper questions about who should it be. There are questions about what are we asking other Senate Democrats to do. But what we want to get a sense from you all is there support for that threshold question? Indivisible National calling on Chuck Schumer to step down from Senate leadership. We want numbers, so I appreciate your emojis, but we're actually going to ask you to vote. And I want to be clear, this doesn't preclude you from issuing your own statement locally or statewide. This is about Indivisible National. I hope there is a lot of unity around the movement, but this is really about what do Leah and I go forward with the team later today to do. So with that said, actually, why don't we queue it up, and that'll give us a little bit more time to discuss next steps right after. Can we launch the poll? I'm gonna not talk for a second just to give people time to think about this and put their answers in. So we're just gonna take a second and we're gonna do the sacred process of voting. And again, I really appreciate everybody taking time out of a Saturday to talk about how we save the Democratic Party from itself. We'll stop when we have 90% submitted.
So if you haven't submitted yet,
We're at 83% right now. I really do want high participation here, y'all. I think it's important for us to really speak with as clear a voice as possible, one way or another. And if you disagree with what we said, that's okay. I want to be clear. That is okay, and it's okay to vote what you really believe here.
Yeah. And I'm seeing questions about how many people are on this call. We've got about 1,100 folks on the call right now. We put this call out to the folks who are leaders of indivisible groups. So amongst you represent a lot more people, but that's also a pretty impressive showing for 24 hours on a Saturday afternoon.
Right. And I want to be clear, this is not a poll of the entire movement. It is group leaders. Our unit of activism within Indivisible. You are going to have to talk about this with your members, and we recognize that. And so for folks who are new to Indivisible, who are new to leading groups, we try to do this regularly for big strategic questions. We try to get you in on the discussion so we can figure out which way can Leah and I move the organization and how much in alignment are we with you all. I think we're at 87% participation. I'm going to give it another minute to get there. I haven't heard Zeke scream in a second, so I think maybe he's in a good position right now. That's great.
Oh, that's good.
Okay. I'm going to say, okay, stop moving. Oh gosh, we're at 89%. We're almost there. I'm going to give 5 of you a little bit more of a chance to actually fill it out. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we have a poll. Can somebody share the poll results? Okay, I would say this is pretty overwhelming. We have 91%, which say 874. I have 961 of you say we should do this. 7% say probably we should do this, but you have a few more questions. And we got 16 of you who say no, not yet. Can I just say thank you for being here? Thank you for being part of this conversation and actually having the bravery to swim against the current. I think that's valuable. We don't all 100% have to agree. And also, we can't require unanimity to act, otherwise we'll never act. I think we're in go territory, y'all. I think that's where that puts us. What comes next is this. I'm going to get off this call after a little bit more discussion. I'm going to work with the team, with Leah, with Andrew, with others, and we're going to come out with a statement that makes really clear. You should not wait for us. You shouldn't wait for us. You should feel free to move forward with your own statement for your own group. You should feel free to start working across your state for a statewide statement. There's nothing wrong with first issuing a statement with your group and taking a little bit more time for the statewide or for the district-wide. Speed is our friend right now. Schumer is counting on us to get distracted for attention to move on. We want to build momentum. We want to show that we're out there. Bubbling up of statements all around the country is useful. We will point to them. I think we've got a form that's already gone into the chat. Andrew put it there. We'll also send it around to everybody here. If you're looking for a template, feel free to write your own, but if you're looking for a template for your group, you can take from that.
And can I, Ezra, you've got the...
Go ahead.
I have a couple of other programming notes just because it's very valuable when we get 1,100 Indivisible leaders on a call together at the same time. So I'm just going to take and say a couple of additional things. One, I'm seeing some questions about April 5th in the chat. You should have an email from us today announcing the hands-off mobilization. I know people have been asking us this entire time, since basically January, when are we all going to get together and do a really big protest moment? When are we going to show how strong the opposition is collectively? All of these things are happening. Can we pick a date and focus in on it? We have partnered with a bunch of people, with Move On, with Public Citizen, with Working Families Party, with a bunch of labor unions, repro folks, environmental folks, 5051. Yeah, with a bunch of folks across the ecosystem to land on April 5th as the day that we are all going to collectively tell Donald Trump and Elon Musk, hands off our democracy, hands off our government, hands off our Social Security and Medicaid, hands off. Just back off. And we are super excited about that. And we also want you to register your events and let us know if you are already planning one. We want to get those on the map as fast as possible so people can start planning around it. So follow your email that you should have for that, or it looks like it's in the chat. Wonderful. Okay, so that's one thing. I just want to note, we're actually looking at pulling together more regular group leader conversations. At one point in our history, the coffee clatch or the regular Q&As that Ezra and I did kind of functioned as group leader conversations. At this point, we are all overwhelmed with new people. There are thousands and thousands of folks on the chat. It does not create the space that is as useful for just group leader specific questions, concerns, strategy, dilemmas, etc. So we are going to look at how we pull those back together in a more regular way. That's not just about bringing you together when we've had a massive betrayal that requires immediate response. So stay tuned. We look forward to being in more touch more regularly on that front.
Just a couple things of next steps. So in addition to statements that you all might be putting together, it is really good to be celebrating your House Democrat if you've got one.
Yes.
I can't state too much. One thing that we heard from the New York groups as a smart strategy was in criticizing Schumer, and putting out their own statements. They will be praising, especially their frontline Democrats in the House who voted the right way. Beautiful. You should be doing that. Any Democrat who voted the right way, this is carrot and stick, right? You want to show we are not here just to yell at Dems. If you do that, they will tune us out. We got to demonstrate that we're part of trying to build a fully unified opposition party, which means if you're in a Republican district, I hope you're orchestrating with other constituents an empty chair town hall for your Republican member and showing up there to put pressure on them during recess, or showing up at their town halls if they happen to be out there. If you're in a Democratic district, show up at their town halls and thank them. Get coverage. You can get, you can do celebrations that are interesting, that really cut through. That will be helpful, and it will help us make the argument to Senate Democrats. Hey, look, see over here, this is what we're doing. We're trying to support you. Give us something to rally around, and we do. I have spent the last week praising Chris Coons. I hate Chris Coons. He's terrible. He's always messing with us. He's always taking the wrong position. He was terrible on the filibuster. And you know what? He did good on this. And we are celebrating him for that. That's the energy we need to bring to this. If folks are on our side, let's support them. Leah, anything else on recess, on April 5th, on next steps for Schumer?
Just appreciation. I know a bunch of folks on this call have been organizing town halls to hold Republicans accountable for this recess. We are going to go hard this week holding them accountable. Frankly, we're super annoyed that this is getting in the middle of what should be a full-throated effort to hold Republicans accountable for their horrible positions, their horrible votes on this bill, the fact that their looming attack on Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. We're going to do all that, and we're going to take care of business within the Democratic Party. We can chew gum and walk at the same time, but just appreciation, because I know you're being pulled in a bunch of directions. We feel it too at National.
Appreciation. I don't know, everybody. I feel chills right now. I think this is what it looks like to actually build national change. This is what it looks like to build a Democratic Party that we're not embarrassed by, that actually fights back. If you look around on this call, there are folks all across the country, red states and blue states and purple states. We're not an arm of the Democratic Party, but we understand what we need in order to fight back. And you all are taking time out of your day to actually do that. You are investing your blood, sweat, and tears into this work. This is the courage that we need in this moment. I'm really, really proud of everybody here. I'm proud to be part of it. Thank you for coming. We're going to keep fighting.
Yeah. Thank you all. I agree so much. This is the courage we need. I wish it was coming straight from our leaders, but it's going to come from the grassroots, and it's going to make it to them.
Yep. Okay. We'll see you all soon.